This is Good Friday. And we often ask the question on Good Friday, well, what's good about it, right? It's Good Friday. There's a scene in the movie Nixon, which I love and I've quoted before, where Nixon has been to China. Y'all remember that? Richard Nixon was the first standing president that ever went to China. And he did some remarkable things while there, aided by a lot of diplomatic work that preceded his going there, of course. But when he was coming back, he was in the midst of the throes of the Watergate investigation. And he had gotten terribly paranoid about all of the reporters asking him questions. It takes a lot to become president or king or pilot. You have to schmooze a lot of people. You have to pay attention to the political scuttlebutt. Know whose shoes you don't need to step on. And Nixon was good at it. He made it work for him. But things were beginning to unravel. And in this scene, he's on the presidential airplane in his big living room with his closest associates, and his press secretary comes in and says, "The press would like to see you." He looked down. He was fearful of what was going to come next, ever more paranoid. His chief of staff looked and said, "No, I'll go talk to them." And the press secretary said, no, he needs to go talk to them. So Nixon stands up straight and pulls himself together and walks in there, expecting the worst. And when he gets in there, all the press start applauding for his great success in China. Not what he expected. Lots of applause. He had the esteem of the world at that moment in time, but it didn't last. It didn't last. It never does. We seek the world's approval for all sorts of things because we are taught from very early on that if we do that, we'll succeed. But it doesn't last. It really doesn't last. Pilate had done that. In all these stories, he couldn't figure out why he was in the middle of this scene right here. He didn't want to be, but he had made his way to the top, and now it was decision time. And the Jews, who John refers to as the Jews, which has been questioned to be anti-Semitic in its use, say to Jesus all sorts of things, and Pilate has to go before, Jesus has to go before Pilate. And he asked him about his kingdom. Are you a king? He said, that's what you say. My kingdom is not of this world, Jesus said. And then that definition of kingdom, he's not talking about a king with a crown and all of the accoutrements of that. A kingdom meant that your allegiance was to the king. You would pay homage to the king. You would do what the king asked, and in return the king would reward you and take care of you. My kingdom is not of this world, Jesus says. He might have followed that with, I haven't sought the world's approval here. In fact, I don't really care about the world's approval. He said, if my kingdom was from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. You say that I'm king, but this is what I was born for, to testify to the truth. Crucify him. And they did. I like movies. I know some of you do too. And I like movies with happy endings. Don't you all like and they usually have a formula at the end. There's a whole lot of people gathered around, and there's the protagonist and the co-star, and they're together, and they've fallen in love or whatever needs to happen to make the movie right again after all the twists and turns. And then everybody applauds. Y'all know this? They all applaud. happy endings. But we don't see that here, do we? We finish at a tomb. And we ask the question over and over again, well, can we rewrite this? How about Jesus sending down an army of angels to destroy these people? Because, if you read Scripture, God does that all the time, right? God's always sending down armies of angels, destroying the evildoers. But in this case, he doesn't. On Good Friday, we read this story. And it said they had this sour wine that they fed him. Sour wine. That was the end. It was right before he died. They're going to give him some sour wine because he said he thirst. An awful tasting liquid. And they put it on a branch of hyssop, right? That's what we just read, hyssop. Now, if you look, and we're all biblical scholars here, right? We know the Scripture, we use it to buttress whatever we believe is wrong, right, or right, But the Scripture tells us that there's another time when hyssop is used. And it's this time. This was the Passover feast. And they did it every year, year in, year out, just like we do this. They still do it today. To remember the time that the angel of the Lord passed over all the people of Israel. And anybody that didn't do what Moses told them to do, the angel didn't pass over and killed the firstborn of all of the land of Egypt. Do y'all remember that story? Do you remember what they had to do to make sure the angel of the Lord didn't get their son? They took some blood of a lamb and dipped a stick of hyssop inside of it and painted the lintel. Hyssop. You think there's some connection there? There's other things that the Bible says, and there's a lot of taboos. Don't do this, don't do that. One of those is don't eat the blood of an animal. Right? And the reason for that was because blood was where the life force was. And the belief was that if you took on this animal's blood, you would take on their spirit. And so they didn't do that. They didn't take the blood and eat it. Some of y'all like your rare steaks. I know some of you do. Well, the biblical imperative says don't do that. Right? Now the reason for that was because they believed that the life force was in there. And they took the blood and they put it up on the lintel of the door to remind the angel of the Lord that they were part of God's children, His chosen people. This is why Jesus didn't send an army of angels to destroy all those people, because that's the way the world works. That's the way Pilate had gone to the top. Destroy your enemies. Make sure that you beat them to a pulp and they no longer can do anything with you. That's the way the world still works. But Jesus came to change the nature of the world. And God sent His Son to die for us. And in a moment we're going to gather around the table of the Lord and we're going to eat His body and we're going to drink His blood. And that's important. We're going to put that blood inside of us and take on His Spirit so that we can change the nature of the world by our behavior. And that's why this is Good Friday. Those with ears to hear, let them hear. Please stand. Dear people of God, our Heavenly Father sent His Son into the world, not to condemn the world, but that the world through Him might be saved, that all who believe in Him